Around a month ago, I had a dream, which I'd like to share with all of you. For those who were at the CHYK discussion a couple of weeks ago, I've already shared it. For those who weren't, I'm sharing it with everyone. So in my dream, I'm in a cafe or a diner, like an old school American cafe or a diner, where there's waitresses and people are smoking and eating pie and watching television. And everyone's doing their own thing. Just imagine a typical American cafe or diner. And it's right beside a lake, and from this lake there's steam arising from it. So everything's not black and white, it's not clear, everything's kind of hazy. And when I wake up, and not wake up, but I find myself in this diner, I'm looking around and I'm seeing that everyone's doing the same thing. And so I'm trying to leave the diner, to see it from an outside perspective. But I can't get out of the diner. The doors are not holding me, no one's holding me back. Something is preventing me from getting out of that diner. And it is at this time that I realized that all of these people that are doing what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing. They just keep doing the same action over and over and over again. And they don't know who they are. They don't know where they came from. They just keep engaging in the same actions repeatedly, as if they're suffering from amnesia. And somehow I break through from this diner, and I see that there's this huge parking lot, and bus after bus pulls into the parking lot and parks there, and people are getting off the bus. And they're happy, they're jovial, they're on a journey somewhere else. It's a bathroom break, it's somewhere for them to eat. And they're all smiling, they're about to go into the diner, but I'm trying to scream to them to not go in there. Because once they go in the diner, they will forget who they are. They will forget where they're going. And they will become like everyone else in the diner, just doing the same action over and over and over again, forever. And I was unable to stop it. And this dream was a nightmare, actually. And as I reflected on it more and more, I realized that it's not something that was just happening in my mind while I was lying down in the bed. This is happening everywhere, all the time. We are on this spiritual journey to be divine, to rediscover our divinity. And then we enter this diner, this cafe, and we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And we forget where we came from, we forget where we're going, we forget who we are, and we're stuck there forever. This is what Vedanta calls samsara. The cycle of birth and death. But forget about birth and death. It's the cycle of joy and sorrow. We just keep cycling back into sorrow. We're happy for a little while, as Nathan said, and then we're back to sadness. Happy for a little while, back to sadness. And we're stuck in this. Some of us, as I'm sharing this dream, as we talk about samsara, some of us don't acknowledge that we are bound. Some of us say, hey, I have hands that are free. I can run where I want, I can eat what I want, I can sleep at any time. That's not the bondage that we're referring to. This bondage comes in the shape of fear. The fear that I see in the new Vivekji here. They're fearing how their experience is going to be. They're fearing people who are older here. They may not acknowledge it, but I see that fear. The fear of the new people that are here. What did I get myself into? What is this place? The stress of the upcoming exam, the stress of the upcoming year, the stress of when am I going to get married? Who am I going to get married to? The anxiety of our parents telling us to do something. the jealousy of our cousins who are in a better school, the lust that we have towards our neighbor's significant other, the frustration we get when we're hungry, right? When we suffer from all of these emotions, aren't we bound then? When we're frustrated, are we able to think clearly? When we're stressed, are we able to smile? When we're angry at someone, are we ever able to let go of that thought? Who we're angry at, we think about the most. Who we want to seek revenge on, we think about the most. That's the bondage that we're referring to. And this bondage limits our peace. It limits our happiness. Now, some other people are thinking, but we are happy. What you're saying doesn't apply to me. There's a very powerful story with Swami Tejamananda that I shared with us when we were studying the Vedanta course. There's a certain type of camel that eats a desert bush. And this desert bush, like animals, has a protective mechanism. It has needles on its leaves so that those who touch it or eat it they're pierced then. They suffer pain. But this camel still tries to eat it, regardless of how much the camel rider is saying, don't do it, or encouraging it not to. And it chews on this bush, and as it's chewing on these needles, its mouth starts getting cut. Its lip, its tongues, all of it starts getting cut, and it starts bleeding. And it starts ingesting that blood, thinking that that's the essence or the extract of that plant. When all it is it's hurting itself. It's just blood from within. Dogs go through the same thing. When they chew on those bones, they're often just cutting themselves. And they think that juice or that rust is in that bone. But that bone contains nothing. So in the same way, what you and I think is happiness is really just relative sadness. What you and I think is joy is absence of pain. Relative to our true potential, our happiness is non-existent. I have people that come to our discussions and say, I don't need to come to these discussions. I don't need to come to these discourses. I'm happy. And so I try to politely explain that relative to the person who's clinically depressed, you and I are on the top rung of happiness. But relative to what our potential is, we are clinically depressed. Relative to the joy that is our nature, the joy that a master experiences, we are on the bottom of that scale, of that spectrum. So this joy that we think we're experiencing is just a label that we've painted, and we call it joy. When really, it is struggle, it is strain, it is suffering. This is part of the bondage that I'm talking about. That bondage is believing that we're happy, and so rejecting what our true nature is. And truly speaking, this bondage is worse than being bound by the hands or feet or mouth. Because if I have chains on, then I can go to the blacksmith or I can ask one of you to break those chains. If I'm tied by the mouth, someone can untie it. But if I'm angry, what can you do about it? If I'm frustrated, who can save me then? Other than myself. This bondage is far worse. It is far more subtle, far more challenging, far more defeating to our joy. Now again, I'm trying to play the devil's advocate to every statement I make. Some people may be thinking, what if our nature is not happiness? What if you don't know and our nature is sorrow or frustration? So the response to that is, if that's the case, why do we try to avoid frustration? Why do we try to get rid of sorrow? Why do we pursue happiness? If it's our nature, then why would we try to reject it? If I rub my hand on this wood that this podium is made of, the chance of me getting a sliver on my arm is very high. And when that sliver is there, what happens then? Then the body starts reacting. It starts sending white blood cells and a variety of other things that I don't know about to try to reject that sliver. Because that sliver doesn't belong in my forearm. It is a foreign entity. It's an alien in the ecosystem. It doesn't do that with my skin or my veins or my arteries, because that's my nature. That belongs there. Why do we dislike sorrow? Because it's not our nature. Now, as I'm sharing these statements, don't believe me because I said it. Don't believe me because of the clothes I'm wearing or the length of my hair. Now I can say that. Just like Swamiji said, Swamiji's dressed differently, I'm dressed differently, Shankarji's dressed differently. Clothing doesn't make one spiritual. Any of you can have access to this clothing. Spirituality happens in here. Exactly where bondage is too. Bondage is not here. We are not bound physically. We all know that.